Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to Christmas Advent Day number 5. Today we're going to be drawing some chocolate or brown coloured fur in coloured pencils. So I'm going to show you the layering process and every step you need to create this coloured fur. If you want to follow along with this tutorial and the others that I've done, they are available on Patreon for just $5 per month and you get access to the full real-time version so you can follow along with me as we're drawing this. As always, all of the materials used are listed in the description below should you wish to check those out. So to start this coloured fur, we're going to swatch down the colours along the side. So the main colours that I use for these are a mixture of the polychromos pencils and the Caran d'Ache luminance pencils. So the colours that we have are, first of all, the warm grey one, then we have the brown ochre 10% in the Caran d'Ache luminance, we have burnt ochre, burnt sienna and walnut brown in the polychromos, dark sepia in the polychromos, and finally the last colour that we're going to use to accent some of this fur is the light aubergine from the Caran d'Ache luminance coloured pencil set. So the first thing that we do is lay down a nice base layer of the warm grey one pencil, and to lay down the base layer I'm just shading the entire circle that we have here. I'm holding my pencil quite far towards the end and I'm holding it in that manner so that I can control the pressure through the pencil. I'm also making sure that I've got a really nice sharp point, and that's just to make sure you get a consistent colour and a consistent lay down onto the paper. Once we've added a first layer down and we're happy that it's all nice and smooth and the colour lay down is completely blended, we go over with a secondary layer of the warm grey one pencil. Once we've laid down the second layer of the warm grey one, we then go in with the brown ochre 10%. We go in with the same manner. We hold the pencil towards the end so that you can control the pressure through the pencil. We work in very, very light layers, so you want to work in consistently light layers so you can build up the colour to where you need it to be. If you go in too heavy, then it's a lot harder to erase that colour, whereas if you go in light, you can build the colour to where you want it to be. If you happen to go too light, it doesn't make that much difference as to when you go in too dark, because you can always add layers over the lighter areas, whereas if it's too dark, it's quite difficult to erase it. So once we've added that brown ochre 10% down and we've got that nice yellowy colour all over this circle, we then go in with one of our main mid-tone colours, and that is the burnt ochre in the polychromos. So with this colour we're still using the shading motion and we're still using very, very light layers, but this time we are adding this colour to the darkest parts on the circle here. So we're going to add this to the bottom half of the circle because this is where I am concentrating a lot of the dark areas, and we're going to add 3 patches throughout the circle as well. So we're going to add these above this dark patch. We're going to try and keep the top of the circle quite nice and light. So once we've added a few layers of that down and got the colour nice and concentrated and nice and smooth and blended out into the lighter areas as well, we're going in with our next mid-tone colour, which is the burnt sienna pencil. Again, we're going in exactly the same manner, keeping our layers really nice and light and keeping a nice sharp pencil so you can keep the colour consistent throughout the layer. We're adding this in the darkest parts once more, so you're adding this straight over the burnt ochre. Adding these two colours together give a really nice warm look, which is what you want for creating the brown or chocolate coloured fur. Once we've added in a sort of shading motion with the burnt sienna, we're then going in with a second layer of the burnt sienna, but this time we're going to start to use some fur strokes. When you're making your fur strokes, you want to make sure that they're going in the direction that the fur is going in. So if your fur is going vertically, you want to add them vertically, but if it's going horizontally, you don't necessarily want to add a vertical fur stroke when your fur is going horizontal. That will make it look really unnatural. So you always want to make sure that you follow the curvature, follow all of the direction that the fur is going in to make it nice and realistic and natural looking. When you're adding your fur strokes as well, you want to make sure that you vary the line a little bit. So if you have a vertical fur stroke, you want to make sure that you come off at a very slight angle to that every now and then. And that just helps to keep it look natural and it doesn't make it look too contrived. If you keep all of your pencil strokes vertical and really straight, you start to end up with a load of parallel lines and it really doesn't look like fur at all. So you want to avoid that at all costs. I always hold the pencil quite loosely in my hand and I work quite fast to add these fur strokes so that you can get a nice variation and it looks a lot more natural and a lot looser. Once you've added those fur strokes all over, concentrating a lot more fur strokes on the darker areas, we're then going to go over and burnish or blend with a previous coloured pencil. So for this I like to use the brown ochre 10%, and I use a little bit more pressure onto the pencil so that I can really smush the colours into the tooth of the paper. So I just use this pencil in a shading motion all over the circle just to try and blend everything together and really soften it. Once we've burnished a little bit, I then go back in with the burnt sienna and redarken a few areas. So first of all, I add a little bit of a shading motion in the darkest area, so on the bottom of the circle and on a few of these tufts that I've added in the circle. And then I go back over and I start to add a few more fur lines. This time I concentrate a few more fur lines in the actual darker areas and try and leave the lighter areas free of the fur lines in this colour. So to darken the bottom of the circle a little bit more and these patches, we then move on to our next colour, which is the walnut brown in the polychromos. So I do exactly the same as we did with the burnt sienna with this. I start off just lightly shading so you can get some really dark colours in those shaded areas, and then I add some fur lines throughout the whole of the piece. When you're looking at a reference photo, you tend to see more definition of the fur lines in the lighter areas and less of the definition of the fur in the darker areas. So that's why I add a little bit of a shading motion in the darker areas rather than just keep continuing doing the fur lines. When you're shading, you can also build up the colour a lot more, which is really important, especially in those darker areas. So to blend those darker areas out into the lighter ones, I then use some fur lines with very, very light pressure and just slightly blend it out into the lighter area so we don't get any harsh contours or any harsh lines going on our patch of fur. Once we've done that with the walnut brown, we do exactly the same process with the dark sepia pencil. So we're shading and concentrating a lot of colour in the darker areas, so on the bottom edge of the circle, and then I'm just adding a few touches of the dark sepia throughout the patches on the circle as well. I'm then adding a few fur lines throughout the circle to really emphasise the texture of the fur. We're then blending out again with the brown ochre 10% just to smooth everything off. You can also blend out with the Caran d'Ache Luminance white pencil to give more of a sort of sheen overlay. So you can add this, as you can see I've added it on the right half of this circle. It becomes a bit more of a cloudy look, and this might be good if you have a sort of grey toned brown patch of fur. You can then glaze over some colours, so you can glaze over some burnt ochres and other colours to accent this brown fur a little bit more. So I mentioned the light aubergine as a colour in the beginning, and I like to add a little bit of purple to my brown or chocolate coloured fur just to give it that little bit of extra pop. If you look on a colour wheel, you'll notice that purple is opposite or contrast to orange, so putting those together will really make them pop. So if you put a little touch of purple in your darkest brown parts or in your orange parts, you'll find that that orange tone within the fur really pops out. So that's the entire process for drawing this colour fur, for drawing and rendering chocolate or brown coloured fur. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to subscribe and give this a thumbs up. It would be great if you could share this video with any of your art friends as well. Don't forget to follow me on all of my social media sites. I'm on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's Advent video. Bye!